Build your better breakfast at Subway with the tasty 250 combo, a 16-ounce cup of freshly brewed Seattle's best coffee, and any delicious egg muffin melt. And don't hit the snooze on this deal. Right now, come in before 11 a.m. for a $5 foot-long breakfast sub. Subway, eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
this is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
It might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Taping this on a Wednesday. It's going to run on Thursday. He hasn't been on in a few weeks, and I blame myself. But now he's on the Subway Fresh Tech Hotline from NFL.com and the NFL Network. Our old pal, Mike Lombardi. What's happening?
Not much, Bill. Excited for this weekend game. Get to see your Patriots and the Colts. I mean, who can get better than that?
We're in a nice little run here of big-ass games. Because we had Pat Steelers last week, and I thought, you know, when you have a game of that magnitude, you're going to learn a little bit about each team. You're kind of, especially after Week 10. Now Pat's Colts coming up, same thing. Are you sold on this Patriots team now after that performance in Pittsburgh?
You know, I've always felt the Patriots would improve as the year went along. Defensively, they've gotten better. Offensively, as they've made this change from Randy and being more of a spread team to adding Danny Woodhead and the two tight ends, and obviously bringing back Deion Branch. I think, you know, they're a more complete team now. They have to continue to get better. They've got the elements to improve. Their pass rush is always going to be a concern, but I like their team. I like their team this summer when they beat the Bengals, and I was at that game, so I think they're just going to continue down the path I thought they would go on.
What was the reaction within the league when he just cut ties with Moss like that? Did anybody see that coming?
I don't think anybody really saw it coming until you decided to direct message somebody. It kind of caught everybody off guard, but you alerted everybody. If we could have only had you at Pearl Harbor, Bill, it would have been so much better.
You know what's sad is before I DM'd Schefter, I was going to DM you. And then I thought, oh, wait, that can't do that. And I actually almost put that in the column, and then I didn't want to. But you were my first thought. And then I was like, this is one of those times when I guess I can't be on Lombardi's team. I have to have my own team.
I'm disappointed, but we'll always be teammates some way. But I think the reality here is Bill has a great understanding of his team. He has a great understanding of what he needs to do, and there were certain things that Randy brought to the team, and there were certain things that Randy couldn't bring, and I wrote about it, and they are always going to be what I call a sustainable organization. They're always going to think about today, tomorrow, and next year, and they're not a solution-based organization like some teams who just think about today. And with that in mind, you know, he knew he could get Deion Branch. He traded away the draft pick for. He got a draft pick for Maroney, which then he turned into Deion Branch, so that didn't cost him anything.
Wow!
And
it was a great
trade. Now he basically, you know, has to rely on, you know, gets Welker more involved, and with those two tight ends, that made a difference in his team, and they played to the level that he thought they could.
We have 3 7-2 teams right now: the New York Jets, the Falcons of Atlanta, and the New England Patriots. You wouldn't say that's the top 3 in real life, right?
No, well, I think, you know, I like Atlanta, and I get a lot of criticism from Falcon fans all the time because I'm a little hard on Atlanta. But Atlanta is really a dome team. They play well at home. They're not always good on the road. They struggle to get going. It'll be interesting to see how they play this week in St. Louis. I don't think that's an easy game for them. But Atlanta has some vulnerability. I was at the home game against the Bengals, and they got a big lead, and then the Bengals came roaring back, and they fought hard to stay. Same thing happened with Baltimore. I'm not sold on Atlanta to be a dominant team, but I think they're playing effectively, and if you have to go through Atlanta to beat them, they're tougher there, especially because it allows their pass rush to get going, and it keeps their running game more in balance. Their offensive line on the road is the question mark.
I'm not sold on them either, but I do think, I agree with you, I think they're a great home team, and that was one of the reasons I picked them last week. I want to see somebody beat them at home before I'm not sold on them. You know who else qualifies for that is the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 5-4, but they're 4-0 at home. They might just be a team that just takes care of business at home and that's it. Are you sold on them being out of the? Everybody has them crossed off now, and everybody's putting San Diego in there. Are you writing Kansas City off?
Well, I think Kansas City has a couple issues. Whenever they play a team that's familiar with what they do defensively, and let's just look at it, closely. When they had to play against a former Patriot employee like Josh McDaniels, Josh really moved the ball effectively on them, and that became a problem. And so there's areas of their team that people understand how to attack and what they have to do to attack it. And defensively, they're not as good as they once were. When they play at home. When they go on the road, they're not as effective. So the crowd noise does help them. Offensively, I'm actually been more impressed with their passing game lately than I was earlier in the year. They're throwing the ball much more effectively. But, Kansas City's a young team. They have to get good before they get great, and I think they're good right now. They're just not 100% there. They need a couple more players, and some of their good players, like Tom Bahali, people are starting to try to utilize, take out of the game as opposed to allowing him to let him beat, which happened earlier in the year.
What does Gary Kubiak have to do to get fired?
Well, I tell you, I don't know if you could put 11 worst defenders on the field. This is the worst defense you ever see. They're soft, they don't play, they don't tackle. The first-round pick gets beat by college free agents up and down the field. I don't know what else he has to do because that's really a dilemma for the owner of the Texans. He's got an offense that's explosive, that's fun to watch, and his head coach is running the offense. And then defensively, they can't seem to get it fixed, whether it's through the draft or whether it's on the field. They don't seem to get the right blend of players to make their defense complement this offense. And I've always said this. They're a team that loves to be down 24-0. They relish that opportunity. They'll come right back. They're like the golfer who shoots, 78 on Thursday and then shoots 64 on Friday to make the cut. And as soon as he gets back in the tournament, the 78's coming back. That's, to me, who the Houston Texans are.
You know who else is kind of like that? The Bengals.
The Bengals will fight you just to get back in so they can say they tried and then they won it, then that's enough. But the Bengals are, after the game, everything you read about the Bengals is how many catches did Chad have, how many did T.O. have. It's everything about winning the game. And to me, it's very difficult to coach in that environment.
Are you writing off Pittsburgh with the offensive line? I mean, I think an offensive line can reach a point where you have enough injuries where you're just not going to come back. Are we there with them?
I think there's 3 teams in the league that have been really devastated by injuries that are going to prevent them from winning Super Bowls. Pittsburgh's one of them. Losing the left tackle is a difficult endeavor to overcome. It's very, very hard. Even though they did it their first Super Bowl, Max Starks came in and filled in, and it was kind of everybody wasn't sure he could do it, but he did. So they're the anomaly there, but right now they don't have a backup left tackle. Green Bay's another team. They lose Jermichael Finley. They start to lose a lot of the defenders on defense. They're not the same team. And then the other team that's not the same is the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts really are not an explosive offense anymore. They lead the league in 10-play drives. They have to grind it out to score. And they're 28th in the league in big plays, which typically is not their style. So the injuries, Dallas Clark being gone, really hurts them, their offensive line. I think Peyton Manning has thrown the ball out of bounds more this year than any time I've seen him in his career. And what I keep track of, especially with Peyton Manning, is when he throws the ball away, that's a sack, because you're never going to sack him.
Yeah.
You're never going to. But when he throws it away, that's counted as a sack. So it gives your defense some sense that they're accomplishing something, because they'll get demoralized. Oh, we can't get him on the ground. We can't get him on the ground. No, fellas, we need him to throw the ball away. That's more important.
I'm with you on the Colts, because you watch them now, and there's guys like they always used to have these backups that they weren't that good, but they could hold the fort. But now there's guys I've never heard of. Like they had that guy Javaris James. It's almost like they're pulling these guys off an assembly line at this point, and I just think you can have too much attrition. I don't care how good Manning is. I feel the same about Pittsburgh's offensive line. I don't agree with you on Green Bay. I mean, they've won their last 3, and I know they've had some injuries, but it seems like that team's kind of coming together. What am I missing?
Well, you take a look at the Jet game. I think that was a remarkable performance by them to be able to shut out the Jets coming off the bye, and they grinded out a win without much offense. I mean, I just think when they play the Philadelphia Eagles again, or they play the Giants, one of those upper echelon teams, I think then their inability to be explosive on offense because of the injuries make it more difficult for them to overcome. And Mark Sanchez, when they shut him out that day, Mark Sanchez was not very good, and that helped. I mean, the Jets had opportunities, and look, credit the Packers. I think the Packers are fighting tooth and nail, and it'll be a huge win if they can go into Minnesota and beat a team they should beat, but Minnesota always plays tough there.
The Mark Sanchez stuff makes me laugh. Now people are talking about how clutch he is. So he leads a comeback against Detroit. Terrible team. And then the next week, they should have lost to Cleveland. If Stuckey just goes out of bounds, the game's over. And instead, it leads to Cleveland has to basically pack the field on their own 40. He throws a 5-yard pass to Holmes that Holmes turns and breaks it. I'm still not sold on Sanchez. Is it okay that I'm not sold on Sanchez?
Yeah, I think so. And, I've watched the tape of the throw. Even the throw he makes to Holmes is behind him. So it's not really an accurate throw, and Holmes makes a great play. And I probably some of the worst tackling you're ever going to see this side of Dallas went under Wade Phillips' direction by the Browns on that play. So, yeah, but look, give the Jets credit. They've been able to hang in there on the road, win 2 overtime games. They kind of fight. If you're a Jet fan, you have to be concerned about a couple things. You got to be concerned about Sanchez's accuracy as the weather gets bad. You've got to be concerned about the pressure from your defense, which hasn't been getting home and hasn't really been creating the kind of explosive plays that you think your defense should. And third, you got to worry about your field goal kicker.
It would be hypocritical of me to complain about the Jets being lucky because I'm the same person who loved the 2003 and 2004 Patriots, and that was one of the hallmarks. I think you make your own luck to some degree. But you look at the Denver game, which really came down to, 4th and 18, the bogus pass interference, which I guess was a pass interference, but I just hate that rule that you can chuck it up and hope something happens. The Lions game, the Lions had 2 chances to finish that off offensively and just didn't. And then, the killer play was when they almost had the sack and then the throw to Tomlinson, and he breaks 3 tackles and then gets a late hit out of bounds. All of a sudden they're on the 10-yard line. And then that Browns game last week, I still have no idea how they won that game.
They won it because the Browns take the field with 1:35 to go in the game, and they feel like we have to try to win this game when really they need 60 yards of offense. The Browns should have just taken the tie. Now, look, I know Herm Edwards says, we play to win the game and all that crap, but there's some times where there's no way you can win the game. You could only lose the game, and unfortunately, that's what they did.
I agree with you, because if they'd taken the tie, they'd be 3-5-1 right now. Still doable. You could run the slate the rest of the way and go 10-5-1, and that might be good enough to sneak into the playoffs. I'm with you. I mean, I thought the odds of them being able to go 60 yards when they really don't have any receivers that you'd hang your hat on. I don't know. It just
they're the slowest team in the NFL, and I've written that. I've said it. They have to manufacture, and why they beat the Patriots is because the Patriots are a defense that doesn't create a lot of negative plays. So when the Browns can create 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 3, they're the best team in the National Football League on 3rd and short because of Peyton Hillis, their good offensive line, but they can't create explosive plays. So 60 yards in 1:35, that ain't who the Browns are.
Giants, Mirage.
Well, the Giants, to me, this is going to be the weekend to really understand who they are. Des Bryant is great, and they couldn't handle Des Bryant's speed. And now they're going to get Bonnie and Clyde coming to town because, I wrote about this yesterday too. I read a book this summer about Bonnie and Clyde. The reason they were so good, you'll like this analogy. The reason they were so good is because they were such good bank robbers in the day is because most of the policemen in the country in the 20s and 30s had to buy their own gun. So they bought 38 little guns. Bonnie and Clyde had one of the only semi-automatic rifles. So they had unbelievable arsenal. And then they had an 8-cylinder car while the cops were driving 4-cylinders, so they had great speed to get away. And really, that's who the Eagles are. They've got an unbelievable arm in Donovan McNabb and the power and the range to throw it as far as you need to.
You mean Vic?
And they've got one of the fastest players in the league. But he's not fast when he starts. He's fast when he starts, but he runs faster after 30 yards than anybody else in the National Football League. So this combination makes them very difficult.
You realize you had a Freudian slip there, and you said McNabb because you still wish that he was the Eagles' quarterback. I'm
sorry, Vic. I meant yes. Thank you for.
No, but it was a Freudian slip. I think there's real meaning to be taken into that. You haven't fully accepted that it's now the Michael Vick era.
I have. I've actually gotten more criticism because I really don't believe in Kevin Kolb here.
Yeah.
I think Michael Vick shifts the balance of power in the NFC. And so to answer your question about the Giants, if the Giants handle this speed coming from the Eagles, with their secondary to me is suspect on the back end, and they handle the Eagles. They gave up 85 points in 2 games last year. if they handle it, then I'll be more inclined to believe the Giants defensively than I would be if they don't.
It just seems to me like with Vic, the Eagles are on a level that no other NFC team is on, because they can just blow teams out and they can get points in bunches. And, we make fun of Andy all the time about the clock management and close game stuff like that. But, if they're up by 10, it doesn't matter. And he's one of the 4 or 5 best in the league at getting his guys to play hard, coming up with game plans, things like that. He's got this one flaw, which is some of the stuff that he'll do in the last 2 minutes of a half or in a tight game. But when you think of all the strengths that this team has, I think that overrides the flaw, right?
Yeah, especially when you're up by 35 with 3 quarters to go.
Yeah,
tough to kind of mess that up.
I mean,
and I give him credit. He's done things with Michael Vick that you have to do with Michael Vick. And Michael Vick the longer Michael Vick holds the ball in the pocket, the longer the defense has to expand and run and cover those receivers. And what happens? The distance between the first defender and when Michael Vick takes off to run is a long way. And then even if it were two-hand touch, you can't get him on the ground.
Do you think that a Michael Vick, Ben Roethlisberger Super Bowl would explode the universe?
It could possibly do that, yeah. I never thought about that. Yeah, there would be a lot to write about. You would probably need a lot of credentials to have the social issues covered and then the football issues covered.
It'd be quite a media day. I can tell you that much.
Interesting.
Yeah, one of the great media days ever. Is there a team that people are just overlooking right now? Because it's Week 11. This is when the cream rises to the top. In my opinion, I think people are sleeping on New Orleans a little bit. Who do you think the team is?
Well, I think you follow the quarterbacks. Whichever quarterback starts to get hot this time of the year, that's who you have to ride. Could it be Phillip Rivers? He's been hot all year. Could it be Drew Brees? He hasn't been the same player he was last year with vertical throws up the field. Last year he averaged 8.5 per pass attempt. This year he's down in the low 7s, which is not typical. But I do believe they're healthier now, and with Reggie Bush back, that'll help Drew Brees. But this time of the year, Thanksgiving is follow the quarterback. Who's got the hot quarterback and whose quarterback's making plays and which defense can complement the quarterback. That's why Philadelphia is an interesting team to look at. Their quarterback's unbelievably hot. Their defense is not good enough to play in the middle of the ring, but when they can play with the lead, they're not bad. And then you look at other teams like the Giants who have flaws, but can they overcome them? So that's kind of what I do. I follow the quarterbacks around at this point.
Hot quarterbacks. I think we could throw Matt Ryan on that list after the Thursday night game.
Yeah,
Tom Brady.
Absolutely.
Tom Brady, Phil Rivers, and then who was the fourth one? You just mentioned him. Michael Vick.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Josh Freeman? Would you put Josh Freeman on there?
I think they've done it. It's a great story in Tampa. I just haven't been able to buy it yet. I watch them on tape, and they give up a lot of yards running, but they find ways to win games. And you cannot apologize for them winning. They can get to 10 wins. But next year they might, next year I would say they're only going to go to 6 wins because the schedule is going to get harder. It's going to become more difficult. They're not a great team, but they're a fortunate team with schedule, and they play well enough to win.
Chargers are 4-5. What's their final record in 2010?
I would say they go 10-6.
Norv, what is it about Norv that it takes him a month to get going? Like, he actually needs foreplay.
Well, I think the quarterback obviously get going offensively. They haven't needed to get going at all. They're so good on offense, but they just turn the ball over, and if they could just punt the ball. I think Norv should calculate his chances of whether should I punt or should I go for it on 4th down. There may be a better, even if he's backed up, he probably can convert the 4th down better than get the punt off.
Well, but how can a team be this bad with special teams? Like at this, wouldn't you go hire like the best specialist who's out of the league this year? Aren't there things you can do to address this?
I don't think it's a scheme issue. I think it's really what happens to you, especially for the teams like Indianapolis that have a lot of injuries and the Chargers who have some injuries, is the depth of your team gets really challenged and the kicking game suffers tremendously. You see it in Miami. Miami lost a game because of the kicking game. It's going to bite up Indianapolis. Indianapolis' kicking game doesn't match up because they've lost so many players. That's where I think Green Bay becomes a factor. The Jets win games because of their kicking game. So, we're in a time of the season where kicking games do matter.
Jets, Patriots, Ravens, Steelers, Colts. As far as I can tell, Colts and then, those teams are all playoff teams, right?
Yeah, the Ravens are a dangerous team, too, because they're tough. and you can't really put them away. They're really tough-minded, and they play hard, and they play 60 minutes. And if you're not able to match their level of intensity in terms of toughness, they'll wear you down. Now, Atlanta, give them credit. Atlanta hung in there. Even though Atlanta had the lead, they fought back. They left a little too much time on the clock. I'm not sure they could have done anything to prevent it. But Baltimore's a tough-minded team.
Seems like out of that group, the team that could drop out is Indianapolis, and here's how. Because they have a game lead on Tennessee right now. Tennessee is home for Washington this week. Then they're at Houston next week, and Houston just looks like they're falling apart. Then home for Jacksonville, and then they have 2 against the Colts, week 14, week 17. Now, if they win this week and the Colts lose to New England, they're tied. Who do you see if you had to bet your life on a Tennessee or Indianapolis, who wins that division?
Well, yeah, I'm going to go with Indianapolis because Vince Young, he has so much going on in his life. He can't make treatments. He doesn't really. I know he's got this rating of being a high-rated best quarterback rating in the National Football League. They don't try to even let him throw the ball very much. And every time I've watched him this year, he's not performed. Whether it be at Pittsburgh earlier in the season, he just doesn't seem to be able to make the plays. Denver, in I think it was October, didn't make the plays in that game. And then last week, he has an opportunity in Miami to be the starting quarterback, misses treatment on Friday, doesn't participate in the walkthrough before the game to see if he can actually get in the game. So,
well, hold on. Wait a second, though. So are you saying that, like, he doesn't care? Like, why isn't he doing this stuff?
I think there's Vince Young, the player, and then there's Vince Young, the corporation. It's kind of like an image thing. And I think it's frustrating to everybody in Tennessee. Whoever you talk to, it becomes a concern for them because he doesn't do the things he has to do. And there's always somebody making an excuse. Well, he was really in Miami and he went there. And, you report a story and then they deny it, but everybody knows it's true. And very difficult. And his leadership isn't of the highest caliber in terms of work ethic. So I have a hard time thinking, like this week, okay, Mike Shanahan was embarrassed, 59 points. Kyle Shanahan, his son, used to coach at Houston. They put incredible numbers up on Tennessee. Remember the game last year, week 2 of the season? It was like, in the 40s?
Yeah.
Houston knows how to move the ball on Tennessee, which means Washington, even though they stink in the offensive line, they don't have any receivers, they'll probably move the ball, especially after getting embarrassed on Monday Night TV. They seem like they could go into Washington, they could go into Tennessee, and Tennessee hasn't been a great home team, and they could actually, do some damage. So, Tennessee, for me, I'm not a believer yet because I don't see a passing game. And
you don't see Jacksonville getting to 10 wins either, right?
I don't see how. I mean, Jacksonville has got to be I know luck's not, but that play last week is really luck. I don't know how else you could do it. I give David Garrard credit. Nobody says this, but I should have said it. I have an opportunity to. It's been too stupid on my part. But most times quarterbacks in that situation like to throw the ball out of bounds. They don't want to get caught with the interception on a quarterback rating.
Yeah, it's true. It's almost like in basketball. You'll notice at the end of basketball quarters, people will rather not shoot the shot over attempting the 70-foot shot because they don't want the missed field goal on their resume.
Yeah, and give David Garrard credit. He threw it up there and put it in bounds. Now, some guys will throw it, but they'll put it out of bounds.
Yeah.
Oh, darn. Even if they intercept it, they can only get 1 foot down. So I give him credit. He made the play, and that's to me that play is symbolic of who Houston is. They just can't close out games. They're not able to to finish. I mean, they made Jacksonville look like an explosive offensive team. So I could see people saying, "Well, you can't rule out Jacksonville in this race."
All right, time for the 3 most important questions of the podcast. Number 1, Michael Vick. Is it fair to say that this only could have happened for him in Philadelphia on this specific team with Andy Reid in a situation where he got to be the backup last year and gradually grew into the role? If he had gone to a team like San Francisco, Oakland, et cetera, Jacksonville, would this have happened? Well, I think he would have been successful because, remember, Michael Vick, before all this happened off the field, won 3 out of 4 games he played in. He was always a guy who could win games, uniquely win games by his skill set. Now, obviously, the dedication. I give Andy Reid a ton of credit here for developing an offense that's not West Coast based, that's more Michael Vick based, like he did with Donovan McNabb, and that's what made Donovan successful. So I think it is the perfect storm in terms of reaching the highest level of success for Michael Vick was Philadelphia. Second question. The Chicago Bears. Every year I have a team that I just don't like, and I think they're not good, and I keep waiting for the other shoe to turn and whatever. I messed up that phrase, but whatever. You know what I'm trying to say.
Shoe to drop, yeah.
Yeah, other shoe to drop. And the Bears are now 6-3. I went against them last week. They burned me. I think I went against them the week before. They burned me. Am I just off here, or is this a fluke?
No, they play better defense than I anticipated they could play, and their special teams are good. Their offense is, not good. They turn the ball over. The offensive line is bad. But last week against Minnesota, they're 11 for 16 on third down, when a month ago they couldn't even convert a third down. So they are showing that they have improvement. I mean, their schedule favors them. The North isn't as strong as we thought it was going to be to start the season off. Clearly, Minnesota, not the same team. Defensively disappointing for Minnesota this year as much as offense. So the Bears are going to be in there till the end. They can get to 10 wins. I mean, they really can. They've got, with 6 games to go, with 7 games to go, they can easily get 4 more wins and be at 10 and win this thing. And it'll be tough to go to Green Bay to win. It'll be tough to go to Minnesota to win, but they can do it.
Couple things as I'm talking myself into them being decent, which I still don't want to, but they do make big plays. They do make big plays on special teams. They can rush the passer and make a couple things happen on defense. The one thing I don't get, it seemed like their offensive line was just in shambles. And I picked Minnesota last week because I thought Minnesota's defensive line would just control the game, and it didn't. Did they do something different with that offensive line that I don't know about? Well,
they helped Chip. They kept guys in, but really Minnesota's defensive line on the road. Look, Minnesota's been a bad road team the last 10 games.
Yeah.
I think they're 0-9 on the road or whatever it is. I mean, they changed the snap count. They messed around with it, and they did a good job of handling it. When they go on the road, the Bears' bad offensive line will show up. There's no question, like it did, maybe not to the degree it did in New York Giant game, but it's going to show up. But they are improving, and they know who they are. They get rid of the football, and look, if they can play good defense and play good in the red area, don't give up big plays, and do a good job in controlling vertical field position with their special teams, that's kind of a recipe to win, especially as fall turns into winter and the weather becomes a real factor.
So what do I do with this Thursday game? We have Chicago going to Miami and Tyler Thigpen. And
I like Tyler Thigpen. I think Thigpen will be able to throw the ball. They'll do a good job of managing. Where I worry about Miami is the special teams. We know Miami's not a good special teams coverage team.
Yeah.
So that's an area of probability for Miami. And then Miami's not a team that's ever going to run away from anybody. They've had trouble in the red zone, which fits perfectly into what the Bears want to do. It'll be a tight 17-16 game, and those are the kind of games the Bears have been winning this year.
I will say with Cutler, he does throw some nice balls. He throws balls that you just go, whoa. Like he had one play last week where he was going backwards and just an effortless flip. Like he was throwing a baseball, just a rocket, 15-yarder. I don't know. I'm starting to talk myself into this. The Bears fans are screaming, no, you're going to jinx us. But maybe they could go 10-6.
Oh, I think they can. I think it's not. I think a little bit like Tampa, they can win 10 games and not be a great team.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to the number 3 question and the biggest one, I'm going to give you a little appetizer. Does Childress have to? He has to go to Tavares this week, right?
No, he's not going to Tavares.
Why? Wait, at this point, why not?
He can't go to Tavares.
Why not?
He's all in. He's still Helmuth on. He's all in. He's got to go all in.
He's all in with a 2-3 spades.
Yeah, I mean, he's all in. Look, he's got no choice. He doesn't have the team under control. I thought it was fascinating after the comeback victory against the Cardinals. They asked almost every player. I was there in the locker room. Everybody's playing, well, we did this for ourselves. And then Childress on the Monday press conference, he took full credit for it. Well, I like to think I teach him that,
Yeah.
Okay, well, I missed that one. Meanwhile, he's got no – you think, hey, look, Brett's there to play, and that's what he's going to do. And he's getting paid $1 million a game to do it. And unless Brett can't play – then he's got no choice. I mean, when the game up in New England, when Brett announced on ESPN, where Ed Warner reported it, that Brett would only have gotten on the plane if he was expecting to play. That put an end to any talk about not playing him, didn't it?
Yeah, but we know how a football team is constructed. When somebody puts himself this far above the team, it just never ends well. Just can't.
Well, but I think he's not. I think the team. I don't get the sense being around that team that the team doesn't like the guy. I get the sense the team's not crazy about their head coach, but I don't think that's Favre. I think they think Favre's toughness gives them a chance to win.
Can you remember a situation in the last, 10 years where a team didn't like their coach and still succeeded?
Well, it's all degrees of what liking. I think I say maybe the word I really am looking for is respect. I think that's the difference.
It's weird is Peterson's having a great year.
Yeah.
908 yards, 4.6.
But their defense is really letting them down.
Well, what happened to Jared Allen this year?
Well, there's not a lot of pressure coming from any side. Ray Edwards either. I mean, now they did it against the Cardinals late in the game with the crowd noise, and they'll be better this week against Green Bay, crowd plus stadium and all that. But really, they have struggled. Sidney Rice, I thought he was going to play last week. I watched him work out against the Cardinals, and it looked to me like he looked 10 times healthier than Percy Harvin, and Percy dressed and Sidney watched.
Yeah, and I wish I had known that before I picked the Vikings in that game. All right, the big question. It's Week 11. Sunday's games will be played on November 21st, which means as late as November 20th, 2010, the Oakland Raiders will have a winning record of 5-4. They're playing Pittsburgh this weekend, and I normally hate the West Coast going to the East Coast thing, but man, Pittsburgh looks banged up. Can the Raiders do this?
Pittsburgh's slow. Pittsburgh is really slow. Troy Polamalu is a great player, but he's not playing great this year. I mean, let's be real honest. And Pittsburgh's slow, and, you have to be able to get nickel formations to run the ball. I don't know if the Raiders are equipped to handle this like New England. See, New England starts the game off in 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, 1 back. Now, Pittsburgh says, okay, they can run the ball. We're going to put our base defense. And then New England spreads you out. And all of a sudden, their base defense is on the field, and Woodley's dropping, and Harrison's dropping, and they create a matchup that they want. They can spread them out vertically, horizontally, and then they can attack them vertically with their short passing game. So the Raiders don't really have that recipe to do it. They're going to have to try to run the ball on a team that's very difficult to run the ball out of formations that don't create confusion for the Steelers' defense. But I will say this, the Raiders have an advantage. The Steelers' offense is very slow. They can't really pass protect. The Raiders' defensive line should be able. It's going to be a closer game. I'm almost tempted to pick the Raiders myself. In fact, Phil Sims was here today at NFL Films. We're doing Showtime, and he's on the same program as the Raiders can win the game there because the Steelers are slow. Their defense is vulnerable. Aaron Smith's not there. Polamalu's not playing the great year that he had last year. So there's strong cases to be made for the Raiders to win the game.
I have a theory about the Steelers because I noticed this during the Pats game. I think all this fuss about changing how defensive backs hit and, you can't headhunt anymore, that was a big part of what they did. If you went over the middle, you were terrified of Ryan Clark. Polamalu was flying around like a madman. And now it's like, it's almost like the safety wheels are on all the defensive backs, and I think it's affected how some teams play. I think that's one of the teams. You agree?
Well, it seems like they're not as explosive defensively as they once were. Early in the season when Aaron Smith was there and they were playing, Lawrence Timmons was playing lights out. He was really good. But, what's happened to James Harrison in the last couple of weeks certainly is going to have a residual effect on the whole entire team.
Yeah. There was that one play. They did a good job of it, NBC. But Welker went over the middle and he dropped that pass he should have had. And then Ryan Clark was coming. He kind of let up, but he still hit him. But then they showed the clip of when Ryan Clark took his head off, which was really one of the all-time cheap shots when it happened. I think if somebody did that now, that's what, a 4-game suspension?
Yeah,
what he did to Welker?
Well, forget the game suspension. It's the 50 G's is what they don't want to pay.
Yeah, and it just seems like these guys are not flying around quite like. What's funny is I think Manning is one of the first people who's noticed this because. But the stats probably, I don't know what the stats are, but it seems like he's going over the middle as much, if not more than ever, because it's now a strategical advantage. Because if you're going over the middle, the guys aren't going to get popped like they did. So you have a little more confidence when you go over the middle, it seems like.
Or even if they are, they're going to get, there's a good chance you could get a defenseless call because they're going to err on the side of caution. So something good could possibly happen with it.
Yeah. So, gunpoint right now, Super Bowl, who's your pick?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. We talked about it today on Showtime on Inside the NFL, and that's a really, really hard one. I'm going to go Philadelphia in the NFC because I just think, as I've mentioned earlier, they're a unique team that's almost impossible to defend. And then in the AFC, I guess maybe I'll go with the Jets I have concerns about. New England I have concerns about. I'm going to go Baltimore. I'll say Baltimore, Philly. How's that?
Baltimore. Wow. I wasn't expecting that one, Mike Lombardi.
Baltimore's a tough-minded team, and they're hard to play.
You know what's interesting about how this playoff picture's shaping out? I'm not sure home field matters as much as it did. I think it matters to New England. I think it matters to Atlanta. I'm not totally sure it matters to the Jets. And, the Giants, same thing. It doesn't seem like that stadium is really much of a home. It's a classic state-of-the-art thing. I think it matters to New Orleans. I think it matters to Green Bay, Indy. Pittsburgh, maybe not as much. Philly, I think, could win anywhere.
Right. Philly can travel well. They can. They definitely can.
So who would you say it matters the most to? Atlanta?
Oh, definitely Atlanta. Atlanta's got to get home field. Atlanta's got to put Matt Ryan in that controlled environment because that's when they have more confidence. Forget that being braggadocious and saying, well, we can win on the road. Hey, you win at home. You're 18-1. Stay at home.
Yeah, because right now I think they have a pretty good chance of getting at least a 2 seed. I think I would pencil them into a 2, but they can get to a 1 and never have to leave. I picked Pittsburgh. I picked Pittsburgh, Atlanta before the year. I think I might stick with that, even though it looks like Pittsburgh. The Aaron Smith thing just killed. I mean, you can't lose. You can't lose the big guys. It's just so hard to come back.
The guys that make the difference in the game. That's the hard.
Yeah.
Green Bay, Jermichael Finley makes a difference in the game. Dallas Clark makes a difference in the game. A left tackle makes a difference in the game. Those are hard injuries to overcome.
Hey, last question. I love when you do the blue chipper rankings. Have there been, through 10 weeks, have there been any guys who have risen to blue chip status that you've been surprised by? For instance, Josh Freeman? Is Josh Freeman a blue chipper now?
I would give him a red chip. Obviously, I don't know if he's quite in the top 5 quarterbacks in the league or 10 quarterbacks in the league, but he's moving certainly in that direction. We know Carson Palmer isn't one of them. We know that. I mean, it's a hit spot there. But there's so many good, there's so many good young players that are coming. Des Bryant is. I mean, I wrote this the other day. Des Bryant will be on the top 100 NFL Films 2030 team.
Yeah. And
I mean, you can just see instantaneously how great of a player he is, and Mike Wallace is a blue-chip player from Pittsburgh.
I agree. How about Darren McFadden?
Yeah, I mean, he's become a blue-chip player. So there's so many, and there's guys. How about Brandon Lloyd? Do you think he's not a blue-chip player?
He's at least a red chipper.
The Denver Broncos have more good players. They have more talented receivers than most teams do. They really do. Their depth at receiver is a challenge. So that's the great thing about the league is you keep finding guys all the time.
Des Bryant and Miles Austin, I would say, are blue chippers. Would you say Hakeem Nicks is a blue chipper?
Yeah, I think Hakeem Nicks is a blue chipper.
Would you say Santana Moss has dropped off completely and is neither a blue or a red? I would say yes.
Absolutely. He's not either a blue or a red.
Larry Fitzgerald still blue chipper?
Yeah, poor Larry. He just can't. Poor Larry. He can't. He can't. He's got nobody to throw him the ball. When they do throw him the ball, he's guarding for his life.
Ocho off.
Yeah, he's off.
How about Michael?
I've been more impressed with T.O. this year than I thought I would be.
I know. I actually would like to see him pee in a cup. I'd like to see what the results would be on that. Mike Williams on Tampa, red, blue?
He's got to be a blue. Some of the Tampa guys. How about these running backs that we're watching? Peyton Hillis is a blue.
Oh, you're giving him a blue.
Who stops him? You ask any defensive player trying to tackle Peyton Hillis nowadays. Now, the Browns lost an offensive lineman, Billy Yates, this week. He was really playing well, a former Patriot.
Yep, we had him practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, that's really going to hurt them. That will hurt them, that injury.
Clay Matthews and Cameron Wake, I don't remember if you had them as blue already. Those guys are on there now, right?
Well, without question they are. Clay Matthews obviously shifts the balance of power. That's the one thing keeping Green Bay together.
It seems like the list of cornerbacks has gone down for the blue chippers. Doesn't seem like they're the same level of, I think Talib on Tampa, definitely.
We had him there, though. He was
always, we had him there.
The problem is if the rush isn't great, even if a corner's doing well, it's tough to notice if the rush isn't going there.
So who would you say like the top 4 corners are right now?
Well, I think Talib's definitely one of them. Obviously,
Yeah, I agree.
Rivas has played well in the last couple of weeks. He's showing that he's kind of back to his old form. You know, he looks like Asamoah at Oakland always plays well. He's physical. He's tough at the line of scrimmage. You know, even though he's had a little bit of an injury bug, I think Brandon Flowers at Kansas City has played really well.
I agree. You know who hasn't been that good on Kansas City, and I was surprised, is Barry.
He hasn't been the one player that you thought, wow, this guy's really going to make a huge difference.
You know what he spends a lot of time doing is running after wide receivers who are catching 50-yard bombs over his head.
The other guy on Kansas City that we didn't have is Derek Johnson's a blue chip player, and Tamba Hali. I think I had him in there, but he's even better than what I had him.
Yeah. I think you might have had. I was going to ask you about him. I think you might have had him as a blue, but I think Matt Schaub has to get dropped. I think he's a red at best.
Yeah.
And you know, another guy that I think
definitely not a blue chip. He's not a blue chip tough guy. And one thing about and I hate to pick on the Texans, but you get your personality from your quarterback or your head coach as a team. And unfortunately for Houston, they have two guys that are really nice people, but they're not really the toughest guys.
You know what? You said this on the podcast a year ago. And it hasn't changed, and I agree with you. There's something. I might have even written this. If your QB and your coach are passive, you know, that you're not in fear of either of them, or there's just nothing going on, you're screwed. I don't know who else is going to step up.
I was sitting on a Delta flight flying from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta. Then I had to go on to L.A. on Sunday night. So we had the game on the TV. I'm sitting there, and they're showing Brady in pregame warm-up, and I sit next to some guy, and I said, if I had, I'd do whatever it took. The New England's going to win tonight. Just look at them.
Right. Last blue chipper, or red chipper, McNabb, I think, is we can knock him off the list, right?
Unfortunately for Donovan, you don't want to be a quarterback on that team. There's no receivers you could throw the ball to. The running game is horrible. I mean, it's very difficult to manufacture. He's getting hit all the time.
Sam Bradford,
but he's not on the list. Sam Bradford belongs on the list. Sam Bradford's the reason they can win games.
Yeah, and you know what? They really could have won. They had the ball in overtime.
They should have won. They should have beat Tampa in Tampa, and they should have beat San Francisco.
Yeah, I like them. They're getting a lot of points this week against somebody, and I think they're...
Atlanta. That could be the upset special. They're good at home, but see, the only thing that keeps me from picking the Rams as my upset special this week is that Atlanta's always good in domes too, but the Rams are really good at home.
Yeah. At some point, though, I mean, if the Falcons are a 1 or a 2 seed, this is a game you should win. So right. I guess when you decide on that game, you have to decide how much do I believe in this Falcons team. Are they a 2 seed, or are they a 1 seed, or do I think they're falling back? Anyway.
And they got time to rest, so.
All right, how are Sims and Collinsworth getting along?
They get along well. You know, Chris has got Phil down because Phil's back's bothered him so badly that he said he's not as on top of it as not in terms of the football, but he's always worried about his back pain a little bit. But they're all rallying. It's a good show. It's fun to do.
Yeah, well, I watch it every week. Mike Lombardi, we can read you on NFL.com. We can watch you on NFL Network. We can see you sometimes on Inside the NFL. And we'll see you in a couple weeks because it was far too long this time. You got to come back.
All right, Bill. Thanks a lot. And really, I'm really impressed with my 76ers. I'm really excited about the direction we're going.
Oh, I forgot to ask you about that. Why are you impressed? How are you excited about this direction? What direction?
Well, we're going to get. We got a chance to be the first pick in the draft again next year. I mean, it's the only direction we can go.
Do you like my idea of trading Iguodala to Oklahoma City for James Harden and an expiring contract?
I would trade. To me, the worst position to be in any sport is to be at the luxury tax or at the top of the cap, whatever your rules are in your sport, and have a bad team.
Is when Mad Men starts next season, is Don Draper still married?
No, Don Draper never gets married.
Don Draper never gets married?
Never gets married. Never.
Really?
No, never goes through with it.
So how does season 6 start?
Basically, Don Draper's still alone.
Oh. I'd at least like to see him go through the motions with the marriage.
I don't think he's going down that altar. I don't think he has a chance. But we got to start talking about Boardwalk Empire. It's in my backyard.
I haven't watched any.
You need to get on it, Bill.
I know. You know, do you think Don Draper will get divorced when he sees that his wife had a nude scene in Hot Tub Time Machine?
No, but true. She does. I'm going to go rent it now.
Yeah, you got to rent that. All right, good luck, Mike Lombardi. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, before we go, I wanted to talk to somebody who actually been on the BS Report a year ago talking about the viability of an LA football stadium. And now it seems like, if I read the reports correctly, he's involved in a group that might actually bring one. Casey Wasserman, what's happening?
How are you?
How realistic is this?
Well, I think the best way to frame any idea as it relates to building a stadium in LA is actually to go back to 1994, and if you have to understand why two teams left LA, because until you solve the problem as to why they left, you can't actually think you can get a team here. And the two teams left because in the NFL, the amount of money you can generate from your stadium with as little financial risk from the owner as possible is what is important to an owner. Right, so obviously the best case scenario is a city or a state or a county pays for your stadium and you get all the revenue. What you had in 94 was two teams in LA, which is an environment clearly where there was going to be zero public money, and you had a time and place in the country where there were lots of other cities, namely places like Oakland and St. Louis, who were willing to completely subsidize stadiums and give 100% of the revenue to the owners. So while it is perceived that LA is more valuable when you realize that most of the financial upside for an owner comes from what they can generate from their stadium, LA is not that valuable, relatively speaking. Now, apples to apples, of course, it's more valuable, but it was never an apples to apples argument. So the challenge since then has been, well, if you're going to invest a ton of money to build a stadium and invest either to buy a team, or if you're going to invest a ton of money to build a stadium and then attract a team, you have to have enough money left over to give to the team coming here to make it worth their while, right? So to me, what that has always meant is that it has to be more than a stadium about 10 football games. Because when it's just 10 football games, there's not enough money to go around, if you will.
Well, when you were on the podcast the last time, you spelled out a whole scenario which I thought made a ton of sense, which is somebody privately builds a stadium. They get some sort of deal with the NFL where they get a locked-in number of Super Bowls. Then you get the rest of the money from the concerts and all that stuff, and you make enough money that you can get back some of the investment, and then the hope eventually is to lure the football team. Do you feel like this is what's happening here?
Well, so the idea that AEG and I are working on downtown LA really sort of takes that to another level, I think, because the concept is building it in a location in and around Staples Center and LA Live is all about leveraging existing infrastructure. And that infrastructure is about roads, freeways, existing parking, existing people used to going down there. So from that perspective, you have to build less other stuff, which reduce your costs. The other piece of this is having it connected to a convention center and having a roof over it drastically changes the quantity and quality of events that you can have there, meaning that it's not a football stadium for 10 events a year, it's an event center that happens to have 10 football games a year. And that is a massive paradigm shift from where every other idea has been in and around LA in and trying to attract a team.
Well, and for people who don't live here, just to fill you in, there's really no place to have a 60,000-seat music concert. You have basically your choices are the Rose Bowl or Dodger Stadium or the place in Carson, which is only like 30,000 seats. But so that clearly fills a void. You could also have the NFL games, as you said. What about college?
You could have college football. You could have Final Fours. And don't underestimate the value of the convention business, right? So just so people are clear what we've talked about doing or thinking about doing. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of processes to go through, but it's about first replacing the existing convention hall that would be torn down. Then once it's replaced, building the stadium in place of the old convention hall. So the net space for the convention center goes up, not down. And the quantity of conventions that require stadiums is actually pretty amazing because you have 50,000 people for the American Heart Association. Well, they need a stadium to have their opening and closing events in. Yeah. No convention hall can do that. Those are actually big revenue drivers for a facility. And so you're talking about a facility that can have 50, 60, 70 events on a yearly basis of scale and scope that are valuable. And all that means is that there's enough money to be generated from a facility to take care of a team and to take care of the financing of a venue. And that's
also,
really what's different.
And the convention hall is, I mean, to be fair, it's old.
This part of the convention hall is the original part, the only old part left. And what people might not remember is that Staples Center was built by tearing down the other old part that was left, North Hall, which is right next to where this would be. So this model has been done in L.A. and has been done unbelievably successfully. I don't think anybody would argue. And by the way, they didn't replace any hall space, but they built Staples Center where the old convention center was. And I don't think that was a bad trade for the city of Los Angeles.
Now, the reason that I'm taking this one seriously, because I've lived here for 8 years, and you always hear, oh, they're going to build a stadium here, they're just going to go there, and, you know, nothing's ever amounted to anything. But you're doing this with AEG, which has really transformed where the Staples Center is, and that whole area, which for people who don't live in L.A., it's this area that was just a dump, and you didn't really feel safe walking around. And now it's this place called LA Live. It's got these restaurants. It's got the ESPN offices are actually there. There's a movie theater. There's probably, I would say, 10 restaurants and clubs. They've built a really nice Marriott and a Ritz, and like it's actually nice to go down there now. And that's exactly where they want to put the football stadium in. I've already seen these guys successfully pull off the basketball arena. I kind of want to bet on them with this thing, right?
Look, if you think about that, Tim Leiweke and with the support of Phil Anschutz did all of this from owning the Los Angeles Kings hockey team, it
Right.
tells you how remarkable it is.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't own the Lakers, they didn't own the Dodgers, they didn't even live in Los Angeles when they started this. You know, they owned a hockey team in Los Angeles living in Denver.
Right.
So it just shows you how capable and what great contributors they've been to the city, and it's a pretty remarkable development to go down to LA Live and Staples Center now and see an entire area completely changed because of an arena built in 1999, and it's an extraordinary thing. And so to me, a football stadium that serves as an event center and has the ability to attract events of global scale to LA is the final piece of the puzzle. I mean, let's not forget, LA hasn't had a Final Four since the 60s.
Right.
California hasn't had a Super Bowl since early 2000s, which was in San Diego. But before that, had one of every 3 Super Bowls. Right? So you went from having one of every 3 to 0. So not just LA, though, by the way. Without a facility like this, California, because Final Fours are only going to big venues now with 60,000 seats, California is out of the big event business. Not just LA.
And boxing too. You forgot boxing,
right?
Like
so
wrestling,
you think about
WWE.
boxing. You think about it, right? Boxing, to your point, Super Bowls, Final Fours, big college basketball games, special kickoff college football games. Those things aren't happening in the state of California anymore, and that's not good for us.
So how much would this stadium cost? How much would everything cost? Like $1 billion, $1.2 billion?
Look, I mean, $1 billion is a good placeholder. Nobody knows what these things cost until you actually get that far into the process. Having said that, everything is going to cost less today than it would have 3 or 4 years ago, given commodities around the world and prices around the world. But ultimately, this will succeed not because you saved a little bit of money on the cost, but because you built a facility and an opportunity that was so compelling economically that you generated revenue beyond anybody's expectations, and that's what we think we can do here.
What are the landmines? What is the biggest reason that this would not work?
Well, the first is obviously, it's been 15 years since there's been a team here or longer, and it's, just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it's going to happen. So, fighting that sort of uphill battle and convincing people that it actually can happen and will be successful in LA is a battle for everybody trying to do that in Los Angeles. And the second thing is, look, people are competitive, and some people, it's not just about their project succeeding, it's about making sure others fail. And so while our job is to keep our head down and focus on putting together a compelling effort and following the guidelines that the NFL sets forth as terms of a process and making sure we do everything we need to do as it relates to the city and studies and reports and process that we need to follow, we need to keep our head down and do our job and hope that people see through any naysayers and see what a good idea this is and what a reality it can be.
All right, so let's get to the part where a team would actually have to move here. Now, would you guys try to buy that team and move here, or you're just saying, hey, use the stadium, just pay us and you move your team here and you can still own it?
Our view is we are completely open, right? We believe that the NFL will drive and should drive that process. And if they believe it's good for us to be a partner in a team, we're happy to do that. We're happy to be a landlord. We think it's fluid, and we think the NFL is going to drive that process, and we think our best job is to try and get everything into position where you're even fortunate enough to have that conversation. But I think it's a mistake to try and dictate to a team owner or the league what terms you need for them to come here. Because, by the way, I think that's what people have done for the last 15 years, and that hasn't been so successful.
Would you stop at one team? What if two wanted to come?
I think LA, I think the facility are more than capable of handling two teams. No question.
And also, we refuted this last time, but just to refute it again, the concept that LA wouldn't come out for football for NFL games is ludicrous. I think, if anything, it could support two teams, not one. I think
I totally agree with you. It is a completely crazy theory to think that we couldn't support 20 event days a year for two football teams.
Nobody knows this better than you, because you're in that whole world of people with a ton of money who have like 8-year-old and 10-year-old kids who are like, hey, Dad, can we get season tickets for the LA Jaguars? I actually think it's going to be competitive with who gets the best suites, who gets the best seats, all that stuff. There's no doubt this can work.
Look, think about the venues people watch professional football in LA from, right? The Coliseum, the Rose Bowl, and the old Anaheim Stadium. Not what you would describe as, in this environment, first-class, compelling places to experience what is, one of the great sports in the world in the National Football League. I mean, in LA, in the city, you've never had a tiered stadium. I mean, that's a crazy idea. Literally never had a tiered stadium to watch a professional football game. And in Anaheim, it was a conversion of a baseball stadium in the old days where those conversions weren't great.
So conceivably, could you say UCLA or USC football could come to this?
Yeah, look, they each have their situations. I think.
What's more realistic?
I don't know the particulars of their leases, but I would tell you, even if it's not on a permanent basis, they could play a game there, they could play a kickoff game there, they could play each other there. I mean, you have two great football programs, as a Brewer and I can call us at least somewhat great. I have some liberty there.
I'll let that slide.
Okay, good. I was waiting for that. But you're going to have a venue that's going to attract. I mean, you see Notre Dame going to play in Yankee Stadium this weekend. You see Northwestern playing in Wrigley Field. This idea of teams traveling and playing in unique facilities is only going to get more and more prevalent. And we think that this could be one of the unique facilities in the country for teams to do that.
And do you see, let's say this happens and you're actually building the stadium, why wouldn't you rip off the Cowboys' giant TV model? I mean, that seems like that's one of the smartest things that anybody's done in the last 25 years with the stadium.
You wouldn't do it in the same way, because a roof in LA doesn't need to be structural because it doesn't really snow here. So the roof is more about creating a controlled environment. But clearly, look, we talked about this last time. People haven't taken a fresh look at the fan experience with the flexibility of starting from scratch.
Right.
They've done it in a retrofit basis, but not starting from scratch. And so how fans engage with the game when they're there and how you make that unique enough and compelling enough to compete with the living room is a challenge every sports league and team has. And starting from scratch is the greatest way to try and tackle that in a different way. So clearly, sort of the concept that the Cowboys really hit a home run with, you would clearly take some elements of that. It wouldn't manifest itself in the same exact way.
Why do these football stadiums have to be 80,000 seats? Why can't they be 50? Why can't you go more intimate and create more demand? I mean, do you agree with that mentality that these stadiums always have to be gigantic?
Well, the big events demand lots of seats, so Final Fours, Super Bowls demand lots of seats. But beyond that, if there's a way to do that in a flexible manner that allows you to have less seats for the recurring events and more seats for the unique events, clearly, I think the wave of the future. I mean, I think we talked about last time in terms of basketball arenas. Why not go to 14 or 15,000 seats? I mean, from a purely commercial perspective, you make your preponderance of your revenue from even probably a few thousand seats, frankly. And so it's really about creating demand and intimacy that are different than has been experienced in the past. And I think that is certainly where facilities of all sorts are going in the future. I totally agree with the perspective.
This isn't going to ruin. I mean, I always wanted you to be an owner. I just think you'd be a good owner. You just keep resisting.
That's just because you could call me and tell me what I was doing wrong.
Yeah, I could. Well, I would do that, but also I just think you'd be good. And now, I don't know. It's been a year. You're still not an owner since the last time you were on, and now you're in this group. But there's a bunch of people in the group. Like, what's holding you back about owning a team right now?
Look, nothing. I mean, for me, if I have a chance to do something that's unique in a city I really love and have grown up in my whole life, like Los Angeles, that's interesting to me. Outside of that, I think I'd be hard-pressed to find a team that I'd want to own or invest in. But, you know, to me, what is the greatest sport in this country, the National Football League, in the city I was born and raised in and intend to live in for the rest of my life, that's unique, that's pretty compelling, and that's something that, you know, I'll spend lots of time trying to figure out, even if it doesn't happen. And so to me, that's sort of, it has to be pretty interesting and unique, because I'm fortunate enough to get to spend most of my day working in the sports business already.
Dodgers? No?
No, we have a very nice baseball business here. I'll keep my season tickets and go to games and let somebody else own the Dodgers if it's not.
I think you can get it for the cheap now.
The McCords. Look, the Dodgers will never be cheap. They're an incredible franchise, and if anybody decides to sell them, I'm sure they'll go for a lot of money.
All right, so what do you tell the fans of San Diego, Jacksonville, Minnesota, and Buffalo?
You know, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, that's not my problem. I live in a city that doesn't have a team, and so my job is to figure out how to create an environment that is attractive to a team. But that challenge is no different than any other city in this country that has a team, right? They need to figure out ways to continue to keep the opportunity for those owners and those facilities unique, and every state has different issues, and clearly California is a state that has serious financial problems, so this is going to be a private enterprise. Some states are in different situations, but look, when teams have leases that expire, which are no different than businesses that have leases that expires in buildings, it gives people the ability to look around. And for 16 years, people have looked at Los Angeles and no one's come here, so you know, we clearly have an uphill battle and need to change the perspective of the opportunity in LA and what actually can be achieved here. And until we do that, no one's coming to LA, frankly.
Hey, Joe Mead. Joe Mead?
Yes.
Buffalo Bills fan. Were you happy with that answer?
Casey, I'd like you to be your job to make sure the Bills don't come to Los Angeles, but, you know.
I happen to think the Bills will stay in upstate New York for a long, long time, actually.
I agree with you.
That's a community that has been unbelievably supportive and loyal. They also can help the NFL bridge into Canada and Toronto, and that's clearly a part of the country that has lots of options to find new and different ways to support the Bills and keep them up there.
What if the NFL said to you, instead of moving a team here, what if we just give you the 33rd expansion team and here's the price?
I mean, obviously, that's a possibility. I don't think it's likely. I think the NFL owners are happy with having only 32 of them in that room, because 33 just means they have to divide the pie up one more way.
Yeah. And
I'm not sure that's economically the right decision for them, which is why you've never heard them talk about it here or anywhere, frankly.
Yeah. I would agree with you. And plus, it seems like it would make more sense. There's a couple teams right now that just doesn't seem like they're going to make it long term in the city they're in. The only thing I don't get, though, as you said before, it's 10 football games a year plus a playoff game. Like, why would anybody build a football stadium unless it was part of a much bigger game plan to do a ton of different things in it?
Well, because there's no other sport that has games as valuable as the 10 games that the NFL can deliver, right?
But how much money are we talking, though?
Teams can generate a lot of revenue from 10 games. You'd be shocked. You know, look at what the Cowboys do from 10 games down there. I mean, yes, they do a lot of other events, but, you know, there's teams making a lot of money and having great success with just football games in their facilities. So, you know, the NFL is unique. And now there are some teams struggling, but the point is, because the league a long time ago aggregated a lot of its rights, it evens out the playing field for lots of teams. So the fact that its media rights are equally shared creates a lot of benefit and a lot of stability for teams that otherwise might not have it.
Well,
it's clearly one of the challenges you see in other leagues.
If you guys created a season ticket list right now, I think I I would sign up, because I don't know if I'm betting against you and AEG together. It's a pretty tough combo.
Well, I'm happy to take your credit card right now, Bill.
All right, let's hang up, and I'll send you my Amex. Casey Wasserman, good luck. I really hope this works out. It's just ridiculous to me that LA doesn't have a football stadium. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
I appreciate it, and looking forward to having a shadow GM in my life.
All right, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right, that's it for BS Reports for this week. I am actually hosting Part of the Interruption on Thursday and Friday with Uncle Tony Kornheiser. So you can check out the PTI podcast for those. And also my book is coming out in paperback on December 7th, Revised Hall of Fame Pyramid, bunch of new takes on LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Dwight Howard and Kobe and a whole bunch of other people. And right now it's like $12 on Amazon. It'll probably go down a little when if people buy it. So you might be able to get it for $10. I'd say get it. What the hell? What do I care? No, but I do think there's enough in there that it is it's different enough from the hardcover. It might be worth your time. If not, no hard feelings. Just wanted to make you aware that it's coming out December 7th. And I also might do a couple signings, it looks like. I need to go back to Washington because I owe the people of Washington after 2 straight book signing disasters. And I think I'm going to do New York and then San Francisco, and that's probably it. But stay tuned for those dates and more. That's it for the BS Report this week. We're back on Monday. Enjoy the weekend.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
We've got some big news, so if you're currently standing, please sit down. Get comfortable. You ready? Okay, here you go. The Chicken Marinara Melt is back at Subway. That's right, this Meltastic number is back as the latest $5 footlong sub. Oh, mercy. Tender chicken and marinara sauce under a blanket of bubbly melted cheese on fresh toasted bread. Breathe deep. Stay focused. If you got a paper bag, please breathe into it, because the $5 footlong Chicken Marinara Melt. This delicious deal won't last long, so get your hands on one today. Just don't stand up too quickly. With such overwhelming good news, you're lucky you're still conscious, so don't push it. Subway Melts. Melted goodness made irresistibly delicious. Subway. Eat fresh.